Thank you, New Hampshire. This my mic? Oh, yes. Voice amplification. It's so great to be back here in New Hampshire. Tracy, you missed the most important thing. I graduated from Phillips Exeter Academy in 1992. That's a pretty tepid applause. Some people here are like, PEA. It's okay. I was invited back to speak at PEA a number of months ago. And when I spoke, I said, this is my first time back since I graduated because I didn't enjoy myself here. And the student body erupted in applause. And I felt really bad. I was like, that wasn't the reaction I was going for. And as Tracy said, after I graduated from Exeter, I went to Brown and then Columbia. And then I became an unhappy lawyer in New York City for 5 months. And that sometimes gets a laugh from people. And I left the firm to try and start a business. How many of you, because this is the Chamber of Commerce, how many of you have started a business or organization or club or list? So if you have your hand up, you know two things. Number one, it's much harder than anyone lets on. And number two, when someone asks you how it's going, what do you say? Great. Everything's always going great. My business went great until it failed. My parents told people I was still a lawyer because it was a much easier story. But I'd been bitten by the bug. I worked at another small company and then another, and then I became the head of an education company that grew to become #1 in the United States and was bought by a bigger company. Now, 2009 is, it's a decade ago. I can't believe it's already been 10 years. That was a very tough time in much of the country. How many of you were here in New Hampshire 10 years ago? And how was that time for you in Nashua in 2009? You're laughing. Were you the mayor then? I just want to commend all of the elected officials and former elected officials, because here in New Hampshire in particular, it's a labor of love. You're certainly not doing it for the money or the glory. And I tell people who run for local office, I believe it's harder than running for president because people know where you live. So the financial crisis 10 years ago racked many of our communities. And I saw this unfold and I thought I had some insight as to why the economy had collapsed. It was because so many of the wannabe whiz kids I'd gone to Exeter and Brown and Columbia with had gone to Wall Street and helped create derivatives and mortgage-backed securities and these exotic financial instruments. And so I thought, well, that's a disaster. That's a train wreck if that's where our energies are going. So I imagined what I would want our energies to go towards instead. And the vision I came up with was to head to a city like Detroit or Cleveland or Birmingham or Providence and help grow a company to create jobs. So I started a nonprofit called Venture for America, started calling wealthy friends, asking them this question: do you love America? The smart among them said, what does it mean if I say yes, Andrew? And then I said at least $10,000. So raised a couple $100,000, which grew to the millions, helped create thousands of jobs in 15 cities around the country. And as Tracy said, I was honored by the Obama administration multiple times. I got to bring my wife to meet the president, so my in-laws were very excited about me that week. But unfortunately, during my travels, I started having this sinking feeling where for any job that my organization was helping to create, many of these communities were losing dozens, even hundreds of jobs. I started to feel like my work was pouring water into a bathtub that had a giant hole ripped in the bottom. But I was still surprised when Donald Trump became our president in 2016. How did you all react when he won? Tears, devastated, disbelief. To me, it was a giant red flag that tens of millions of our fellow Americans decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star as president. And even if you were devastated or cried, we all have family members or friends or neighbors who were very excited about his victory. I started to dig into why I thought he won. If you turned on cable news today, why would you think that Donald Trump's our president? Facebook, racism, Russia, Hillary Clinton, perhaps, emails. But someone shouted out the economy. That's closer to the truth. When I dug into the numbers, we've automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs over the past number of years. And where were those jobs? Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Iowa, all of the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win and did win. And if you doubt this, if you go through the voter district data, you see that there's a straight line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a voting district and the movement towards Trump. This happened in New Hampshire, but it happened earlier. You all lost over 12,000 manufacturing jobs in the northern part of the state. And when you go to those towns, you see that many of those towns have never recovered. That after the factory or the plant closed, then the shopping district closed and the population shrank. When I was in Detroit and Cleveland and St. Louis, you saw a lot of the same things. We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country because what happened to the manufacturing jobs is not stopping there. It's now heading to retail, call centers, fast food, truck driving, and on through the economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in New Hampshire? And why are those stores closing? Amazon, that's right, one word answer. Amazon soaking up $20 billion in business every single year. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? Zero, that's your math, New Hampshire. 20 billion out, zero back. 30% of your stores and malls close. Most common job in the economy is retail clerk. Average retail clerk's a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $10 an hour. So if her store closes, what is her next opportunity going to be? How many of you have seen a self-serve kiosk in a fast food restaurant, like a McDonald's? Every location in the country in the next 2 years. Starting in the front of the house, they're going to move to the back of the house. When you call the customer service line of a big company and you get the bot or software, I'm sure you do the exact same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, until you get someone on the line, right? How many of you do that? Yeah, the software is terrible. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software is going to sound like this. Hello, Andrew. How's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, delightful. You might not even realize it's software. What is that going to mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $14 an hour? How many of you know a truck driver here in New Hampshire? It's the most common job in 29 states. There are 3.5 million truckers. And my friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They say they're 98% of the way there. A self-driving truck just took 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania about 2 weeks ago, totally autonomous. Why butter? I have no idea. But you can actually look that up. You can just like robot butter truck and it will pop up. What does this mean for the 3.5 million Americans who drive a truck for a living, or the 7 million Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? Despair. These are the forces that are tearing our country apart. Many Americans feel themselves getting left behind and pushed to the sideline. Corporate profits are at record highs today, also at record highs in the United States of America. Stress, financial insecurity. How many of y'all are college students? I sense many of you. Student loan debt, record highs. Not normal. Even suicides and drug overdoses. And unfortunately, New Hampshire is one of the epicenters of the opiate epidemic in the country. But 8 Americans are dying of drugs every hour in this country right now. So these are the things that people are experiencing on the ground, and it's only going to accelerate as artificial intelligence leaves the lab and starts hitting the economy in earnest. This is not just a blue-collar problem. Artificial intelligence will be able to do the work of bookkeepers, accountants, radiologists, even attorneys. Right now, software can edit a contract more quickly and error-free and certainly inexpensively than the most experienced human lawyer. We're in the midst of this economic transformation, and for whatever reason, we're scapegoating immigrants for things that immigrants have next to nothing to do with. So my first move was still not to run for president, because I'm not a crazy person. I went to Washington, D.C., and I sat down with our leaders, and I said, what are we going to do to help our people manage this transition? And what do you think the folks in D.C. said to me when I said, what are we going to do? We don't know, nothing. The 3 answers I got most frequently were, number 1, Andrew, we cannot talk about this. Someone suggested Americans wouldn't understand it anyway. Number 2, we should study this further. Number 3, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future, which sounds very responsible. How many of you heard a politician say something like that at some point? Yeah, we all have. But then I said, look, I checked the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs? I'm anchoring you low because it is low. 0 to 15% success rates, total dud. And when I said this to the folks in DC, one of them said, well, I guess we'll get better at it. The truth is that the folks in DC will do well whether we do well or not. The feedback mechanism is broken. It's one reason why Donald Trump's our president today. And one person in DC leveled with me and said something that brought me here to you all. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here will do anything about this because Washington, D.C. is fundamentally a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we will do something about this is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. That was over 2 years ago. I said, I will be back with the wave. I accept that challenge. And I stand before you today, I'm 5th in the polls to be the nominee of the Democratic Party. We raised $10 million last quarter in increments of only $30 each, so my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. And that $10 million, zero corporate PAC money, all people-powered, all grassroots. We just announced today that we're going to do better than that in this coming quarter. We are growing while other campaigns are shrinking because we are solving the actual problems that got Donald Trump elected, and we have real solutions that would help move the country forward. So what are the solutions? If you're here today, and I appreciate you braving the elements and saying, I'm going to go see Andrew Yang, even though it's yucky, because it's pretty gross out. Even, you know, I mean, I grew up in New Hampshire too, so. If you're here today, at some point you heard that this guy wants to give every American $1,000 a month. Remember the first time you heard that? And the first time you heard that, you were like, ha ha, that's a gimmick. That's too good to be true. That will never happen. But this is not my idea, and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. He called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King fought for it in the 1960s, called it the guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. And it is what he was fighting for when he was assassinated in 1968. I had the privilege of sitting with Dr. King's son in Atlanta, Martin Luther King III, who said, this is what my father was fighting for when he was killed. 1,000 economists endorsed it in the 60s. It passed the US House of Representatives twice in 71 under Richard Nixon. It's called the Family Assistance Plan, would have set an income floor for all Americans. And then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that, New Hampshire? Alaska. And how does Alaska pay for it? And what is the oil of the 21st century? Technology, AI, software, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail? We laugh, but where did the data checks go? Facebook, Amazon, Google, the mega tech companies that are paying zero or near zero in taxes. That is the game, New Hampshire. Our communities are getting sucked dry and depleted. We're looking around wondering where the value went. And the biggest winners in the 21st century economy are paying zero in taxes. What we have to do is we have to get our fair share, your fair share. Make sure Amazon, this trillion-dollar tech company, actually is paying taxes. And equally important, we have to put that value into our hands, into your hands, the hands of the American people. Build a trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. Because if we put this $1,000 a month into your hands, where will the money go in real life? I'm going to guess a lot of it's going to stay right here in Nashua or New Hampshire, right? This would be good for the Chamber of Commerce. You run a business here, it'd be like, wow, I think people might be patronizing my business a little more often. But the money would go into car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League signups, and local nonprofits, and religious organizations. It would create a sustainable path for rural parts of the state that right now are struggling to find it. It would make our people stronger, healthier, mentally healthier, less stressed out. For the students who are laboring under tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, it would help to clear that debt. Though I want to do more to clear that debt independent of giving you $1,000 a month. Because that 1.6 trillion is out of control, and it's immoral the way it was generated. This $1,000 a month would help us manage the greatest economic transformation in our country's history. I am friendly with some of the leading technologists in the country. They tell me, hey, Andrew, I've seen what's in the lab, and when it comes out, it's going to be a bigger problem than anyone realizes. You know how that conversation never goes? Andrew, I've seen what's in the lab, and everything will be fine. That's not the end of that thought. The more someone knows, the more concerned they are. The folks in DC are decades behind the curve on technology in particular. They got rid of the Office of Technology Assessment in 1995. Congress has literally had zero input on technology issues for 24 years, aside from the tech companies themselves. And you can guess what the tech companies have been telling them. So these are the changes that we have to make to rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for us, to work for you. If you're a young person, you feel like it's not working for you, you're right. It is not working for you. If you were born in the 1940s in the United States of America, there was a 93% chance you were going to do better than your parents. That's the American dream. That's the American dream that drew my parents here. If you were born in the 1990s, which is some of you, you're down to a 50-50 shot, and the number is declining quick. That's why young people in particular feel like we've left you an economy that doesn't work for you, a mess in addition to climate change. And we have. If you're a young person and you feel distressed or angry about it, I get it. We owe you better. We have to do better for you. We have to start measuring how our economy is doing based upon how you all are doing to see how it's working. Again, corporate profits at record highs while our life expectancy is declining. Which is more important? Yes, I agree. And if you think about how we're measuring the value that we're producing, my wife is at home with our 2 young boys, one of whom is autistic. What is her work included at in our economic measures? 0. And we know that's nonsense. We know the work she's doing is among the most challenging and important work that anyone does. It's not just her work. The things that we value most are progressively getting zeroed out in American life. It's parenting, yes, nurturing, caregiving, volunteering, mentoring, coaching, increasingly arts, increasingly journalism. And our market is going to systematically undervalue the work done by women and underrepresented minorities in particular. We all know that women do more of the unrecognized and uncompensated work in our society every single day. So by properly measuring our progress, we can actually see the depth of the problems and then start working to improve on them. So if GDP is this phantom measurement that has less and less relationship with how we're doing, and even its inventor said 100 years ago, this is a terrible measurement of national well-being and we should never use it as that. What would a measurement that actually measures how you and your family are doing look like? Like, what would that measurement be? Yeah, you could. You could do something around civic engagement. How about mental health and freedom from substance abuse? How about health and life expectancy? Ability to retire with dignity? Clean air and clean water? We can actually make these the measurements of our society. And as your president, that's exactly what I'll do. I'll say GDP is 100 years old. It's time for an upgrade. It's past overdue. And here's how we will measure our progress now. And then we would see we're in a mental health crisis. We would see we're in a wellness recession. We would see that our environment is getting worse and worse, and it's not included in our current numbers. How many of you all have run a business or organization or department or division? Imagine if you had the wrong measurements for that organization. How would it do over time? That is where we are right now as a country. We're getting beaten over the head with GDP, headline unemployment, and stock market prices, and none of those things has much of a relationship with how we're actually doing. GDP, I talked about a little bit. Stock market prices, the bottom 80% of Americans own 8% of stock market wealth. The bottom 50% own essentially 0. Stock market prices correspond to the top 20% of society if you're generous. And headline unemployment doesn't include the fact that millions are dropping out of the workforce, that people are doing 2 or 3 jobs to get by, and that 40% of recent college grads are doing a job that doesn't require a college degree. So if we get the measurements right, we can actually make progress. Donald Trump said in 2016 he was going to make America great again. And what did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. You remember that, New Hampshire? It has been a long several years. I know. We have to acknowledge that the problems are real and that they are deep in our communities, but we need solutions that would actually help people and move us forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? I'm going to build a wall, I'm going to turn the clock back, I'm going to bring the old jobs back. New Hampshire, we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society as quickly as possible to rise the real challenges of this era. We have to evolve in the way we think about ourselves and our work and our value. And I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you very much, Nashua. Thank you. Math is an acronym. What does it stand for? Make America think harder. That's right. That is your job. You're going to help us move the country, not left, not right, but forward. Thank you very, very much. We're going to be celebrating New Year's here in Nashua. I don't know if you knew that. There's a giant party, Martha's Exchange.
Why don't you hang on to that and I'll use it.
Oh, thank you, Daisy.
So I don't know if this one's still on or not, but can you all hear me? I'll try to project. I'll use my mom voice and everyone will recognize that one. So I've got a couple of questions I want to ask to start off and then we'll look to the audience. So just as a prep for that, if you do have a question and you can use the mic that's right there that Samantha is pointing to, and as you get up to ask your question, if you could state your name and if you are with an organization or a business, that as well before you ask your question. So let me start off. So you talked a bit about jobs going away because of artificial intelligence and different kinds of automation and things like that. But here in New Hampshire, we're actually seeing the opposite of that. We have thousands of jobs left unfilled right now because employers can't find sufficient skilled workers to fill those jobs. How does your economic plan and your education perhaps as both of those, how do those policies help business owners who right now can't be as successful as they could be because they don't have the people to fill the jobs?
Yeah, a lot of it does revolve around education, and many of the employers that are looking for workers are trying to find skilled technical workers, tradespeople. We have a massive national shortage of tower climbers and HVAC repair people and people that actually work on the guts of our infrastructure. There are other types of needs and gaps too, but I'm going to talk about these technical jobs because I think it's just such a massive opportunity. Only 6% of American high school students are in technical or trade or apprenticeship programs right now. In Germany, that's 59%. Think about that gulf. And we are lagging behind because many of the employers are looking around saying, I need someone with this sort of training. So we have to get that 6% up as quickly as possible. And this has the added benefit of being able to say to our young people that college is not the end-all be-all for everyone. Only 33% of Americans will graduate from college. And again, we've made it more and more expensive. What we have to do is create paths forward for different students in different areas and lead them to the opportunities that need to be filled in many, many communities. I'll also suggest that a lot of the people that are looking to hire too, and like the headline unemployment rate, it really does obscure a lot of weakness that I see when I talk to folks here in New Hampshire. Because if you're doing multiple jobs to make ends meet, you count as employed. If you're underemployed, you count as employed. And if you leave the workforce and stop looking because of a health problem or you're taking care of a relative, you don't get included in that number. So there's a lot of weakness that's being obscured in our communities because we're using a measurement that's way out of date and misleading.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up also on your Freedom Dividend Plan. So $1,000 a month, not having to do anything for it, sounds pretty good to a lot of people. So I did a little bit of simple math, and I will admit up front, political science major math is not necessarily my strong point, different math than that math. But there are a little over 209 million Americans who would qualify for that at $12,000 a year, meaning over $2.5 trillion a year to fund that. How does the math actually work that you can tax whatever corporations you want to tax to come up with that additional revenue every year forever?
I'm so glad you asked. I love it so much. So first, you have to look at who the biggest winners are going to be. If you have Amazon, Google, Facebook systematically paying zero or near zero in taxes, then of course you're going to have problems affording things. But if you put a mechanism in place where we all get even the tiniest slice, our fair share of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, eventually every robot truck mile and AI work unit generates $800 billion a year with a giant up arrow attached to it. So that number is going to shoot up. Now, $800 billion is not 2.4 trillion, as you suggest. But after you put the money into our hands, the money doesn't disappear. It circulates through our community and our businesses over and over again. Ends up increasing tax revenue by conservatively, let's call it 600 billion or so. Then here's where the magic comes in. You save an additional hundreds of billions on things like incarceration, homelessness services, emergency room healthcare that we spend almost $1 trillion on now. And it was right here in New Hampshire where a corrections officer said this to me. He said, we should pay people to stay out of jail because he sees how expensive it is when they're in jail. This is what happens in our society. We don't invest in people, and we end up paying in much more expensive and punitive ways when they hit our institutions, because we know our institutions are incredibly expensive. And the last piece, the best piece, is that one study showed that if you were to alleviate poverty in this way, you would increase our GDP by $700 billion a year just on the basis of better health and educational outcomes of our people. This is a massive investment in human capital. And this doesn't even take into account the catalyst for entrepreneurship and creativity and value creation that would ensue by having a population that could actually afford to take some risks and not feeling like if they fail, then it's going to mean the difference between having a home and not.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more, and then I'm going to open it up to all of you guys so you have a chance to ask. But so in essence, right now, you're in a job interview with the American people for a very important job, the leadership position, the CEO to end all CEOs. As someone who's hired many and perhaps fired a few people in your life, what's your advice to the American people as they compare and consider all of the candidates? So what should they be thinking about as they check off your qualifications and those of others to make sure they make the right choice to fill this critical position?
I love this question so much, and I've never gotten it. I love it.
Kudos to Samantha from the chamber, whose question that was. So thank you, Samantha.
To me, the most important thing about who we choose as our president is whether they understand the real problems on the ground as we're experiencing them, and then can actually bring solutions to bear to solve them and improve our way of life. I'm going to suggest to you all that technology is the driving force behind many changes in our economy and society, and that most of the other figures in this race, whom I like and admire a great deal, and I consider many of them friends, but many of them do not understand technology very well. And they also do not understand technology's intersection with the labor force very well at all. That if we have the wrong person in that seat, we're going to have another 4 years of your malls closing, of AI getting smarter, of the robot trucks starting to multiply on the highways, and that as this continues, it's going to get harder and harder for us to actually put in place a path that lets Americans know that we are not going to be left behind, that we're actually the owners and shareholders of this country and not inputs into a giant capital efficiency machine. If you don't understand the real problems, you're not going to be able to solve them. And I believe I have a much clearer understanding of what lies ahead for this country.
Thank you very much. I'm going to shift to all of you now. So I see I've got a line going. If you do have a question, so we've got probably about 15 minutes for questions from all of you. Again, if you could state your name, and if you're affiliated with a business or organization, let us know that as well, and then you're welcome to ask your question.
Hi, I'm Will Bronson. I drove down from Maine today. I'm president of Enlightened Education Co-op, which is based in Florida. But my question is this: is a follow-on to the guaranteed universal basic income. The rationale for that, obviously, is to deal with the dislocation that will come from increase in AI and robotics and automation. But there's an equally strong justification for it, in my view, and I wonder if you'd comment on it. According to Stephanie Seffett at the MIT scientist, she's come up with a scary statistic because of the exponential rise in autism. And she claims that within 10 years, every other family will be dealing with a child in the autism spectrum. This will take a terrific amount of resources to provide for homeowners who typically caretakers in the home that aren't being paid, and you've spoken to this on a number of occasions. But could you comment on this as a possible other justification or reason or rationale for the freedom dividend, which I like to call the tech dividend?
All right. Thank you for this question. These are the best questions I've received in quite some time. I have a son on the autism spectrum, and what I say to families around the country is that special needs is the new normal. Certainly, I have not seen a study that suggests it's going to get up to 50%, but it's already normal in many millions of families around the country. And the big problem here is that you have a special needs child like my son who shows up at school, and the school says, I don't have the resources available to actually do what this child needs and requires because I have one teacher for 20 kids and I don't have the budget for this. And so that child ends up falling through the cracks. The family has to scramble. There are massive problems. But it's in large part because, again, we're confusing economic value and human value. We're saying that this kid needs more and thus is a burden on the community, instead of seeing it the way we should be, which is that our kids' well-being is the point of the economy. We should use that as the measuring stick, which incidentally means you pay teachers more, you hire more teachers, you lighten up on the standardized tests that we devised during World War II as a means to identify which kids not to send to the front lines, and now we're just bludgeoning our kids with them and distorting teacher behavior. You stop treating your schools like assembly lines and start actually trying to put the resource in place to give our kids what they need. If you change it from this cost model to this investment model, then you see that this is the future of the 21st century economy, making ourselves stronger, healthier, and more whole. And if we don't evolve in that direction as quickly as possible, then you're correct that many communities will feel themselves to be overwhelmed by the cost of supporting many special needs children who, quite frankly, are going to grow to become special needs adults. And if we don't start changing the measuring stick, then we're going to see these people as, again, cost centers and burdens instead of being owners and parts of our families. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Hello, Guy from Executive Intelligence Review. I'm from Massachusetts. Speaking about Make Americans Think Harder, we need a national science driver program to lift up the population economically and inspire the population. But we have a couple major problems to solve first. Number one, you were talking about your friends who went down to Wall Street with the derivatives and stuff. Well, since 2008, the big banks are much bigger and about to blow out. The Federal Reserve has been giving them $100 million a day since September, which means we're close to a very big blowout again. Okay, we have HR 2176 in the House. Everyone should be calling their reps and demand it passes and becomes law. And last one is we have to get back to economic sovereignty. In other words, we don't need an independent private entity controlling our economy. We're over $20 trillion in debt. So we have to get back, do away with Federal Reserve, have fixed currency, and get back to the American system.
This was a very profound question. So some people, when they come to an event, one of the thoughts is what Tracy originally asked, is like, where do we get the money to do what we need to do? How many of you here remember voting for the $4 trillion bailout of Wall Street? How many of you remember anyone saying, where are we going to get the money? That's what he's talking about, this printing of hundreds of millions of dollars a day to shore up the balance sheets of our banks. No one voted for that. No one, no one said, yeah, let's do that instead of bailing out homeowners. I mean, to me, the obvious choice was to bail out homeowners and keep people in their homes, keep communities whole. But instead, we chose to recapitalize the banks. And that is an emblem of the choices we're making in this country. Everything revolves around the almighty dollar and our institutions, and we don't trust our people in the least. We have to choose our people. And to your point about what we've done in terms of recapping Wall Street and privileging them, you're right. The banks are now bigger than ever. They're absorbing more and more of the financial activity. Community banks in places like New Hampshire are a thing of the past. If you're old enough and you remember being here, you remember there were community banks here that likely got gobbled up by Bank of America and the gang. So this is what we have to, again, counteract. We have to choose our people instead of the banks, and we do have to stop bailing out Wall Street and letting them run and own our economy in this way. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. HR 2176, get passed.
If I just might, in the interest of time, because I think we could probably get 2 more questions in, if you could keep your questions a little succinct, that would help us get more people to ask their questions. Thank you.
Mr. Yang, thanks for coming. My name is Joe. I'm a college student from Worcester, Mass. So my question today is based on the dividend that you're talking about. Now, of course, I know what you want to do with putting taxes on different companies such as Amazon, Facebook, and things of the like. But my question is, how can you prevent these companies from outsourcing themselves into other countries to avoid such tax, the removal of such tax breaks?
Sure. So this is based upon a system that's in effect in just about every other developed country. And it occurs at the point of sale. We're the #1 market in the country, or the world. So even if Amazon were to shift some of its offices to other places, they're paying it at the point of sale, so they pay it no matter what. This is what other countries have figured out. Other countries have said that having the Amazons of the world pay zero in taxes is untenable. And it's worked everywhere else. It would work here too. Because you're right, companies will do anything necessary to try and save money, but this is, because it's a point of sale, it's very, very hard to escape. It's impossible to escape, actually. The comparison I use is that Jeff Bezos right now is worth about $109 billion post-divorce. If you were to ratchet up the tax rate, let's say to 75%, 80%, how much of his $109 billion do you get? Next to nothing, because he's not dumb enough to pay himself $5 billion a year. He pays himself something modest, and then most of his wealth is tied up in Amazon stock. So what you do is, like Willie Sutton, the bank robber. Why do I rob the banks? Because that's where the money is. The money's flowing into Amazon, so you take it at the point of sale there. Then you get billions from his business. And then when Jeff takes $1 billion out of his stock every year to buy rocket ships to Mars, which is what he does with his money, then you take a toll there too. You make it so that you get it coming and going, and then it ends up in our hands to make our families and communities stronger. But because it's at the point of sale, it doesn't matter where they base their operations.
Thank you.
Thanks, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kurt. I'm a campaign supporter from Massachusetts.
I can tell by the shirt. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you. I'm going to head to Iowa also for you.
Yes. Or you could just stay here in New Hampshire, either way.
Well,
I mean, no, you do
closer.
both. We'll do
Closer
Iowa and then come on over, yeah.
So it might be time to put some minds at ease about healthcare. This phrase, Medicare for all, it's become this sort of political football. It's almost a branded phrase at this point. To what extent are you anchored specifically and explicitly to Medicare for all as it's written as a phrase? And to what extent would universal health care be a more useful phrase?
I like where your head's at, Kurt. To me, Medicare for all is universal health care for all Americans. It's not the name of a bill. It's a name for trying to get every American health care independent of their work status or whether or not they can afford certain levels of premiums. Now, I'm not someone who thinks you can uproot private insurance plans quickly, because you're talking about millions of Americans on these plans. In some cases, they actually negotiated away higher salaries for the plans. So somehow legislating those out of existence very quickly seems to me to be unduly impractical / disruptive. So the plan to me should be for the government to provide a public coverage option that then outcompetes the private insurers and squeezes them out over time. Now, to your point, Kurt, it is true Medicare for all means certain things to certain people, and you're probably right that universal health care would be a better way to frame it.
Good afternoon. Make Americans think harder. I would challenge you to think harder, to look for chess moves that reduce the size of government and make it a freer country, such as if a state legislature says no more zoning restrictions in any city and town, immediately there would be an abundance of new jobs in demolition and construction. And with the glut of housing, meeting the modern code, there would immediately be landlords scrambling to find tenants for half the rents that they're paying now, more people waiting at each bus stop. The bus companies could extend their hours and their routes, and people wouldn't have to pay for a parking lot when they don't even have a car.
This man strikes me as so new. What's your name, sir? Where are you from?
My name is Tom Alseer. I used to be a state rep here briefly many years ago.
And are you from here in New Hampshire?
I live in Hudson, New Hampshire now.
Because I was going to comment that you sounded and felt so New Hampshire to me. There was such like this, libertarian element to this idea, and I'm sympathetic toward many aspects of it. We do have to lighten up on some of the restrictions on development. A lot of the restrictions are NIMBYism, where it's just saying like, not in my backyard. Affordable housing is good in the abstract, but not here because I don't want it to depress my home's values. And big picture in terms of the federal government, Donald Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp. In many ways, he was not wrong. Again, it's the richest city in our country. And what are they producing? Unclear. So he said he wanted to drain the swamp. I want to distribute the swamp. Why would you have tens of thousands of employees and buildings in the most expensive city in the country? You should be moving those agencies to Ohio or Michigan or New Hampshire or Florida or a place that would actually love to have that economic activity. The cost would be much lower because everything is cheaper in these places. And I would argue the decisions would be better because they would actually be tied to our communities and make decisions not from the bubble of DC, but from an actual place where other people are working and living relatively normal lives. So I'm sympathetic to much of what you're describing, and I do think that zoning regs are standing in the way of a lot of the affordable housing development that you're seeking.
One last question. So go right ahead.
I like his sweater too. Look at that. No, show them. Yes.
Go to www.shopyang2020.com. But Mr. Yang, I was at your Hanover Town Hall event about a month ago. And just a quick disclaimer, this could be a little bit long, but I'll get this as short as possible because this is the best way that I can get my message out to people. But, and I think this would encapsulate what we're kind of all thinking. So, Mr. Yang, there's not been a poll in an early state released in 47 days. Tom Perez, the chairman of the DNC, just rejected your request for the DNC to conduct and release more early state polls, essentially cutting off a vital pathway to the January debate. On Perez's Twitter biography, he writes, and I quote, likes the Buffalo Bills, the Democrats, and fighting for the little guy, though not in that order. Well, apparently he doesn't like fighting for the little guy who has over 400,000 donors, including some here right in New Hampshire, which would, you look at that, is an early state. So, to the people in the room, we have a chance to outraise Elizabeth Warren in the fourth quarter. And I'm going to look towards kind of the biggest camera in the room. But if there's someone from the DNC watching, oh, shoot, where am I? If there's someone from the DNC watching, look at the crowd. We've crammed over 100 people into a room built for 30. There are people watching from out the door. Poll the people is my point. I cannot even vote in the 2020 general election, but I'm the most passionate about this than anything I have been in a long time.
Give me a high five, man.
Yes. I've done a little bit more. I'll try to get through it.
I love Ellis.
So Tom Perez, fight for the little guy, fight for all the little guys in this room, fight for the American people, poll the people.
Poll the people.
It seems like we're not going to get much help in this process. So to the people over 18 years old, keep phone banking, keep canvassing, keep yanging people, keep making America think harder, because we all know it's not left, it's not right, it's forward. And I am a part of the Yang Gang because I'm scared of the future in America. And in my age group, I am not alone. So Mr. Yang, do you have any thoughts on the issue?
Yeah, let's give it up. My thoughts are you're making me feel better about the future, Ellis, just by being so passionate and articulate and spot on. I mean, that's awesome leadership on your part. I believe we're going to get the polls we need in the right time frame, and I'll be on that debate stage in January. What is the #1 criteria for Democratic voters for the nominee? Beating Donald Trump, that's right. And a poll right here in New Hampshire said that 10% of Donald Trump voters would support me over Donald Trump in the general election. Another poll said that 18% of college Republicans would choose me over Trump. Unlike any of the other candidates in the field, I am drawing in disaffected Trump voters, libertarians, and independents, as well as Democrats and progressives. I am the best candidate to take Donald Trump on and beat him. That's why as soon as they poll New Hampshire and Iowa, we'll see that we're well above the DNC's threshold. And I will say, I'm very confident we're going to make the debate stage. We've actually offered to the DNC to pay for the polls because they were complaining about cost, and it was like, we'll pay for it. So we'll make that debate stage in January, but more importantly, this campaign is going to keep growing and growing because we are talking about the issues that Americans care about and the problems that we see around us every day. Really, Ellis, man, you really are an inspiration to me, man. Like, thank you so much. And he's also a poster child for the reason why I believe we should lower the voting age to 16. And hear me out on this. Some of you are like, that seems aggressive. But 16-year-olds can pay taxes. If you had 16-year-olds being able to vote, it would transform every high school in the country into a political hotbed instead of something that's like, oh, we don't talk about it. No, you can actually vote. Studies have shown that the earlier your first vote is, the more likely you are to vote throughout your life. And frankly, you're going to be here longer. You should have a say in what's going on. The main counter-argument to this is that 16-year-olds are too immature and ill-informed to vote. And I think Ellis just proved that to be nonsense. Am I right? Yeah. So thank you, brother. Let's fight it out for you.
Less than $1 million to the $3 million Q4 fundraising goal, so keep donating. We got to make it.
Thank you, Ellis. You're the best. Look at that. Not a plant. Just a passionate young person here in New Hampshire.
So my apologies to those of you who didn't quite get a chance to get your question in. Thank you for coming out. Again, I'll add my own personal thanks to those of you like Ellis who are younger voters taking the opportunity to get yourselves educated, all of you for coming out. Whether Mr. Yang is your candidate or you're still on the fence for or supporting another candidate and just wanted to hear what he had to say, your participation in the process helps make it a stronger and better process for all of us. So really, thank you. Particularly thank you to you, Mr. Yang.
Oh, thank you.
A pleasure for sharing your time, for answering our questions, and sharing your positions, and especially my questions that were maybe a little pointed.
I love your question.
Again, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, Rivier University, the Telegraph, our host sponsor, the Nashua Public Library, and our corporate sponsor, Fidelity Investments, thank you all very much for coming. I believe you're going to do photos.
The line's gonna start right there.
So line up around here for a photo. I'm going to claim privilege and take the first one. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
You can come in now if you want a picture.
Big time politics.
How are you?
Hello, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Oh, yeah, I'll bring you back.
Alright, guys. Do you have a couple seconds or are we still?
I'll have a good holiday.
Good. How about you?
This is their holiday. They're coming out you, man. Yeah, New Year's Eve party. How would you have felt if we'd been like, we're campaigning Christmas Eve, we're campaigning Christmas? Kidding. Yeah. Wouldn't have done that to you.
Say all of our controversial stuff on Christmas morning.
That's a strategy.
Just the best of y'all's holiday.
All the questions about Ken Jeong?
Is everyone ready?
Let's do it.
All right, so Mr. Yang, if you can just talk to us about, you signed a letter for Cory Booker earlier this month that said we should revert to earlier qualification standards when it comes to the DNC. Are you predicting yourself now by saying polling standards should be consistently raised?
I was for lowering polling standards to help make the debate stage more diverse. DNC very clearly said, hey, we're going to elevate the standards. And so our response now in this situation was, if you're going to elevate the standards, you need to have polls. Like, how can you raise the standards and then not have a poll for 47 days? So that's where we are right now. I would be thrilled if they decided to go back on the announced standard, but I thought that was unlikely after they announced it. We're trying to influence what they were going to announce before the fact, if you remember.
But I guess even now you would be diversifying the debate stage, which is still all white at this moment, if you reverted to former debate standards, which is what you previously signed on to.
Yeah, I would be thrilled if they ran polls. I'd be thrilled if they reverted to earlier standards.
And on your letter that you sent to Tom,
We're just being nice by saying the standards.
on the most recent letter, the DNC came out today saying that they would not be commissioning their own poll. I think part of that concern is, the accusations of perceived favoritism of a candidate if one does better than another in a DNC commissioned poll. Is there anything else the DNC could do aside from spending their own resources or commissioning their own polls to encourage more early stage polls?
Nothing is preventing the DNC from reaching out to any of the approved polling organizations, so Quinnipiac or Monmouth, and saying, hey, when is your next poll going to be in each of these states? And if they heard back that it was not going to be in time for the January 10th deadline, they should say, why don't you start it as soon as possible? And if there's any cost involved, then we can help with that cost. The DNC saying we can do nothing about it seems disingenuous because they can clearly just reach out to any of the approved polling organizations and ask for a poll to be conducted in a given timeline.
In California, there's going to be a new law coming into the new year where if someone's personal data is breached, then they're allowed to sue the company. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there should be a federal policy?
I think that sort of policy is overdue, but I would go a step further. It's not just that we can sue if our data is breached. We should be privy to what's happening to our data even when it's not being breached. We should own our data as our property, even if we're deciding to loan it to technology companies. And if it's getting sold and resold, or if the tech companies are profiting from it, we should know about that and we should be able to share in the value. So I love the law. I just don't think it goes far enough to make our data our own property.
We're gonna move one step to the left for the last question, so excuse me, I'm gonna get another shot. Sorry, guys.
On healthcare, which came up here today in this town hall, you spoke on this week over the weekend about your healthcare plan, and this voter today asked you about it as well. Medicare for All is the name of Senator Bernie Sanders' bill that would essentially eliminate private health insurance. Your Yang 2020 website still lists Medicare for All as a platform of your campaign. Is it disingenuous or confusing to use that term when it is not what the actual text of the bill and the policies by Warren and Sanders are?
To me, Medicare for All means universal health care for all Americans, and that's where we should be driving as quickly as possible. We need to get healthcare access up and the costs down to a level where Americans can get the healthcare that they want and deserve. Healthcare should be a human right here in this country instead of a means for companies to make money off us.
Your version and Senator Sanders' version mean two very different things. Would you consider rebranding your own as you were saying earlier, universal health care? Do you think it's confusing for voters to have all this terminology?
Again, I think Medicare for All means universal health care to me and other Americans. And I think if anyone spends any time with us, they can see very clearly what our vision for the healthcare system is.
I guess just to follow up on the question, we have come to believe that Senator Sanders' bill is sort of the definition of Medicare for all because it's been used for so long. If you ask the majority of Americans, that's what they believe the definition is. So does it feel like you're sort of taking the definition and just redefining it?
I can guarantee that virtually no Americans have actually read the proposal. And so if you were to say the proposed bill that Senator Sanders put forward. So if you say Medicare for all to most Americans, I don't think they're thinking about Senator Sanders' bill because they actually haven't gotten into the weeds in reviewing that bill. What I think and what I believe most Americans think when they hear Medicare for all is we should all have health care. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right, let's do it.
Right here.
Perfect.
Get out of your way.
I'll come down. Would you like me to sign your hat too? You want me to sign the top of the bottom? That's my ritual if there's a Navy. I got the silver Sharpie good. Thank you very much.
We came prepared. We were worried about the Sharpies.
See, look, this is the kind of leadership we
kind
need.
of thing that can run the country. That's true. Come on, quick. Well, I'm waiting for my son. Oh, okay. Is there? I'm waiting. All right, good.
Okay.
You're waiting? Oh, great. All right.
Hello.
Hi. Nice to meet you, Emma.
We're ready. Got it.
Let's go.
You want me to sign up for you?
Sure.
Where you want me to stand?
Yeah,
We're okay.
on the table. That way people can exit.
Thank you for being here. Are you speaking about a movie back here?
Yeah, we all go to Holy Cross.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for being here.
1, 2, 3.
Here, hold the Sharpie. You are? Yeah, I'm all right. No. I saw your sweatshirt and I liked it.
Thank you.
I'm the supplement immigrant. This corresponds to many, many of us.
Yes. I hope you do.
I will. You know
Nice to meet you. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Nobody's just stopping for a short.
Thank you very much.
I got their phone.
Hi, are you sisters? No.
No.
Let me get some in between you.
Right over here, right? 1, 2, 3. Got it.
So good to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who's next? We are. I was going to ask you a question.
Sure, fire away. You should have gotten it. What was your question?
Well, my question was, I'm from Texas, and in my state I can be fired for being bisexual. I was just wondering.
Well, we gotta put a stop to that.
Well, that was my question. It was, what are you going to do on a federal level?
Yeah, we passed the Equality Act. We have. I actually, to be honest, I thought we'd already protected sexual orientation. I was surprised we hadn't.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate you. I'm Andy Violet. Nice to meet you. I love your message. Everything about it makes so much sense.
3, 2, 1. Got you guys.
Thanks a lot. Good luck to you, man.
Thank you, Andy.
All right.
Thank you. Take it easy, man. Thank you.
Hello. Nice to meet you too. Thank you for being here.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1.
Thank you so much.
Hey, man. How's it going? Good to see you. Thank you for that.
And we'll do a 3-minute video. I got this because I did 3 days of canvassing.
And
And I got it's going to show exactly what your eyes all about, and I will send it to you if you can forward it on to 3 of your best friends, such as Dan Gilbert, Tony Shea. I've been reading your books, and I think that what we're doing at Mirage is something that you would want to support.
Yeah, I would love to be able to help.
Okay, and I'll forward that once it's done because it's taken 3 years and a lot of work to do. Andrew2020.com. All right, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, man.
Hi, I'm Tracy. Nice to meet you.
3, 2, 1. Very nice.
It was great to hear you.
Thank you.
I'm so good. Yeah, I just moved here from California. Yep. Yeah, I'm in grad school for library and information science. So when you talk about the
change from like, you know, into like computerization and information science.
See it all.
All of it, yeah. I work in a public library. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah. Hi, nice. Hi, how are you doing? Yeah. I know. Ready, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Oh, wait, I think you want one. Sorry.
Yeah, that's our proposal. Oh, yeah. It was for my friend Ben. Did you sign it out to Ben? He's voted for you. Yeah, me too.
And he was you in our
He was you actually at school.
at our school debate.
For a school project. This is literally going to make his entire school year.
You're already good friend.
Wait, sweet.
Do you know what's your name?
Julia? Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Love it. Thank you for everything harder. Looking good. Yes. Come on in.
Yeah, I'm also allowed to ask for signatures, right?
Sure.
Ready? Yep. All right.
Sorry.
1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Yeah, would you like to sign?
My hat.
You got it.
We have a couple of things in common. I have 2 boys.
Yes.
One of whom was on an IEP from the age of 3 years old.
Yes.
And he's now 17. He couldn't be here today, but he's taking AP Gov now, and he's one of your biggest supporters.
Yeah, and I'm planning on doing that next year.
Yep. And we met you in Londonderry back in August. So, yeah.
Hopefully you can get to see more growth since then.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like I've kind of seen it going from like it would be really cool if he was, but like it doesn't seem likely to. Wait, he could probably win.
That's right. I love New Hampshire.
Your biggest supporters.
Yeah, like
and as I'm a clinical psychologist, and you're the only person who's talked about mental health issues, so I applaud you for that.
I don't know if you know that. My brother's a psychology professor.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
I actually used to work at a McDonald's where I quit because my job was essentially, hey Matt, you want to go help them learn how to use the kiosk? Yeah. So like, kind of.
See it all.
So like the message kind of resonates with me, especially.
I love that progression. Now we're here. We think we can win. Yes.
Yeah.
With your help, we can. Keep spreading the word. Listen to your mom. She's awesome.
I mean, I know I'm not going to be old enough to vote by the time the election comes around, but like, for your re-election, I'll vote.
Yeah. I got to fight to make sure you can vote for my re-election.
And I will say, I stayed home with my boys for 3 years when they were little, and because they're only a year apart.
Yeah.
It was the hardest job of my life, but the best thing I ever did. So hats off to your wife.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll let
Yeah,
you know.
thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Have a nice
Take your
day.
brother for me, too.
All right.
I actually go to Middlesex, so it's in the same league as high school. I'm 16, so I could vote if you would make that happen. Yeah.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. Wonderful.
Do you want signings? I actually have a friend who, again, is also 16 and wants to vote for you.
Well, what you have to do is you have to identify at least one vote in the person in New Hampshire. And then make them your proxy.
Yeah.
And like, you have to vote.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I gotta fight for you all. Please say hey to your friend for me.
All right.
Hello.
Yeah,
Are these,
Jay?
these your parents?
My parents.
I thought so.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You should be very proud of your daughter.
Good to finally see an Asian face.
Oh, thank you.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. Got it.
Thank you. I'm very pleasantly surprised by, as you can say, Asian men. Sometimes people have racial preference and things like that. And I guess you stay on the message and people respond.
I mean, I'm just trying to solve the problems that affect us all, and that, to me, is the Asian way to run for president.
I know you have been here before. What's your view on Taiwan?
I have family there, so my feelings would be pretty obvious. I just want to maintain the status quo and make sure nothing negative changes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Are you kidding? It's a blast. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in the tech industry myself, so I'm actually creating some of the automation that you're talking about. But I do agree, it's an interesting challenge that we have.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable. Automation is unavoidable.
Yeah.
It's an interesting challenge.
You have to get in front of the curve.
Yeah.
Because if you get too far behind it, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
You have to make it so you can do the work that you can do, just like free and clear. Everyone should be celebrating it.
Thank you. Hi, Andrew. It's Raph. Thank you. Raph like math.
Hey,
How you
Raph.
doing?
How you doing, man? It's good to see you.
Yeah, just wanted to ask you a quick question. Actually, you can sign me both as well. Can we do blue?
Yeah, that's pretty easy.
Thank you. So, I was drawn to you by the fact that you don't do identity politics. Do you think that it's pushed the country forward or backward?
I do not think it's a good thing. I would like to try and bring us together. I certainly don't want to lean into that stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thanks, Raph. What a cool name you've got, bro. Hello.
Hi, I'm Claire.
Claire, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Yeah, pick first outside. But yeah, happy to sign.
Oh, thank you. So I'm actually here from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Really?
Yes.
I gotta get there.
Yeah, we're excited. Super excited for like everyone to start coming there.
Yeah, this thing. I'll sign it too if you
Oh,
want.
good. Thank you.
I love these Grand State returns.
I know. They're cool. Grand State. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. So great to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet
So when you say you're in from Milwaukee, are you living here?
Well, I go to school in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Oh, that would do it.
Yeah, so we're here. That's our professor. We're here, like, taking a class on primaries.
Oh, so fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
I gotta thank him for bringing so many fun, awesome people.
Yeah.
Look at that, you boxed out a bunch of New Hampshire people. That's good. But it's true. Yeah.
Hey.
How are you?
I actually just had a quick question. So I was on your website and I didn't notice a public transportation policy or anything. So I was just wondering if you had any plans about that.
Yeah, I think it should be an infrastructure, but I'm a very big proponent of public transportation.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Trains in particular. Please ask, how many people did you bring?
12 total.
Such a fun class. Yeah. Good for you.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Dude, look at that scarf.
That's right, I did it. Looks familiar. Awesome.
You know my wife, yeah.
Is there any chance I could get the sign for my students?
Of course. How do you want me to dedicate it?
Can you write to the Daily School, D-A-L-E-Y? I teach probably like 75% Asian American kids and they love it. This is going to make a difference. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Joe, yeah, nice to meet you.
It was a good question because we know those companies
Everyone,
are
if you could just keep it to a quick question and or a signature and a photo for any interest of time, we would greatly appreciate it.
And my dad's a Republican, all this stuff, you know. I mean, I love your libertarian kind of approach to it.
What time we
If
got?
I had one follow-up, why did you choose to be Democrat over Republican?
Some of it's the mechanics of this race. Some of it is I do line up with the Dems on a lot of social issues like pro-choice.
For sure, for sure. Okay, well, hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Get a picture?
Of course not.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, same phone.
Same phone? Fun.
Hi, it's great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Want me to sign up?
Yeah, I have two. One for my friend who's actually in this line, but
Sure.
she...
You do the same, right?
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Appreciate it. All right.
Was this a fun class for y'all?
Yeah, it's been great. We actually got here a few days ago. This is day 3, actually, so it's great to meet you.
Who else do you see? Joe Biden?
Not Amy Klobuchar, we saw Bernie. Yeah, but I really enjoyed what you had to say.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Great to meet you.
Great meeting you too.
Hey, how are you?
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too.
Could you make this out to the College of the Holy Cross? Thank you. Yeah, we're all here together. Let's see, a lot of candidates, so but I really appreciate your talk.
Hey man, see ya. How you doing? Good, good. Be at that party tomorrow. Yeah? Here in Nashua. All right. I'll be here Wednesday too. Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
How you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. I gotta go to work after the hospital. Appreciate it. I always root for you during the debates.
I can't keep up.
I'll see you tomorrow at the party here in Nashua. I'm going.
I'm so glad you're going. I should do a platform. Sorry? I can't do all of it.
All right, appreciate it.
I'll do
all the books that I gave this Christmas gift to my friends and families. I appreciate it. I love this campaign. I love the message. This is, I think, my 8th time seeing you, but I'll see you tomorrow too at the party.
It makes me very happy that your party's with us.
Thank
It should be
you.
a really good time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I saw Biden in Tulsa yesterday, but
Yeah, how we doing?
all right, Joe. I can't understand what he's saying. He's like half asleep.
You're the mic on you.
But it's always good to see you. I look forward to partying with you tomorrow.
Partying tomorrow. We're gonna bring in the new decade.
Oh yeah, I have my Newsweek magazines too at home.
Oh, sure thing, man. Bring it out if you want. I'll be there.
Hey,
thank you so much.
Happy
Kurt,
to
right?
meet you. Yeah.
Kurt.
Great memory. I'll see you at the party as well.
Oh, thank you for the support and being here, man. I can't believe you're going from here to Iowa, back to here.
I'm
kick
doing
some
it.
butt.
I might be back up here.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to be following you too, because we're going to go from here to Iowa, so I might intersect with you.
All right.
Very
We'll
shortly.
see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt.
Hi, my name is Colin.
Hey, Colin, how are you?
Great. Could you sign this poster? Please.
Of course. I got a marker that might be
Oh,
here.
yeah. Thank you,
The
man.
silver one's probably good. Let's do this.
Yeah.
This
Is that photo
picture.
real?
Oh, this picture is 100% real. I can prove it. That is Truman Benton. That is Oliver Crabtree. That is Ed Coe, who's in jail now. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, I made the poster myself. I just found that photo really
I hate when it's not on live.
I've actually came from Spain to see this on a huge screen.
Oh, thank you, man. That photo cracks me up. You show him or anyone? Check out this photo, my yearbook photo that he turned. I do think we can get better.
Oh, man.
Like in a 90s band.
You're right. You're right. You believe that was right here in New Hampshire too? You believe that? Oh, we're gonna see the picture.
I don't know why it's shut off.
I do love that. Let me sign your hat too. I've got this sharpie
Alright, we
hats.
gotta move, guys. We gotta move.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I got you.
Wow.
I've got a good silver sharpie sign. I love that. Thank you, bro.
Thank you very much.
How are you? Nice to meet you, Andrew. We're together.
Hi.
Jenna.
Hey, Jenna.
Is this Harper? Hi. All right, want to smile?
What a group.
Yes, the whole fam. Kelly. 1, 2, 3. Harper, say cheese.
That was incredible.
Thanks.
that'd be awesome. Yeah. Least I can do. Thank you all for being here.
Remember, want to sing? When we're practicing. Say math.
Doing a great job.
Can you say math?
We gotta make it better for you.
Yeah.
We gotta make it so that by the time you come of age, all is on the
All
right
is
track.
good. That's why we're here. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good job, man.
Oh, thanks so much. No problem. That'd be bad, huh?
When I've got this bad boy, I want to sign all the hats.
Awesome.
Hey,
thank you so much. Take care.
Good luck. Congratulations on the beautiful
Thanks.
family.
Thanks.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. We'll see you very soon.
Hey, how are you? Pleasure to meet you, I'm Matt.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Hi, Andrew. It's great to meet you both.
Yeah, we're so happy to be
We have a
here.
lot of books. We don't know how many you can sign.
I'll sign as many as you got.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. My son is here from D.C. We need to open an office in D.C.
Yeah, we do have a lot of fans in D.C.
Yes,
by
you
the time
do.
we open an office there, it's going to be the White House.
Well, that'll be great.
Jody's supposed to go back there, so thank you for saying that.
It was my first time being in town hall, and I thought yours was great. I saw you on an interview on CNN, and I was very impressed. You handled that interview so well. My husband and I are very interested. We'll be watching a lot of your debates, and very interested in everything you stand for.
I'm just a parent just trying to fix things for our kids. Because we're really leaving an awful mess.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
I'll at least the one.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to hold you up. No,
Appreciate
it's
you being here.
Thank you
absolute
so
pleasure to
much.
meet you. Good luck. Thank you very
I
much.
think my son wanted a picture with you. Did he? Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And
Thank you so
good
much.
luck with everything. Really, truly, good luck.
Appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Hello, hello. Who's it? Hey, man. High five. What's up? Ooh, just the two of us.
Alright, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Alright, guys.
What's up?
I'm gonna hop in this now.
All right, with mommy.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Have a great one. Thank you for coming.
How you doing, man? It's like fourth-time meeting you. Great seeing you.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
It's great to meet you. Or see you again.
Met him before.
Yes. So I remember meeting him, but I have not met you. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I brought my dad one time to that apartment on Broadway that you spoke at with
Albert
venture
Wenger.
capitalist Albert Wenger. Yes, yes. It was really cool.
That's what I remember.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I'll be canvassing until the sun goes down today. I'll be doing it tomorrow. Hopefully I'll see you at Martha's Exchange.
Plus, your hair is so badass.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man.
I was never able to pull that off.
You live in Somers. That's awesome. I'm from Young.
That's funny. We go very similarly.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. No wonder you seem tough. It's like, is that up there? I'll toughen you up. Yeah.
Love what you're doing. Can't wait for you to become president.
Would that be fun? Get some shit done.
That'd be awesome.
You know, this young man said to me, he said, people have gone from like, it'd be nice if you be president, but it's unlikely to now. It's like, wait a minute, we could actually win.
You will win. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey guys, thank you for waiting.
Thanks for running for president.
How are you?
How's it going?
I really like this group.
Yeah.
Come on in, guys. Let's get two everybody on one side. Let's level it up like this.
One before it
Yeah.
Okay, but ready? 3, 2, 1. And then we have tape ready? 3, 2, 1. All right, got it.
Happy to sign whatever you guys like.
How are you spending your evenings?
Right here in Nashua, we're having a giant party. Martha's Exchange.
You got me on party, man.
Yeah, come on by.
Take some few shots or something.
We're gonna party it up. Oh my gosh, am I gonna get drunk? Who knows? No
What's
one
your
knows.
What's your choice? You get the Asian flush.
I have the Asian drowsiness.
Yeah, I get the two. Try to stay away from it as much as possible.
Yeah, me too, because I'm not much company if if I'm too drowsy. So.
Yeah, and so my friends are always trying to get me drunk. I just fall asleep and you get it.
Yeah, it's like if you want to carry me home and tuck me in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Good to see you. Nice guys. Hello, hello.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here today.
I know I'm fine now.
Thanks.
Do you live here in town?
I live in Groton, Massachusetts.
Is there a boarding school there?
There's two in town, the Groton School and Ports Academy. Thank you.
It's good meeting you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to meet you. Thank
Thank you very much. Sign.
Of course.
Lauren.
L-A-U-R-E-N?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
One of your first 65K donors.
Awesome. Thank you.
Original.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Been following since we heard of you on Rogan. Typical millennials.
Not at all. Hopefully you've enjoyed the growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're up to almost 400,000 donors now, so your first 65, that makes you like real OG.
Yeah. Never donated before. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Andrew, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, you weren't even on my radar a few months ago. I gotta tell you. And I started looking at you. I started getting emails and then I started reading up on you and everything.
That makes you very happy.
Yeah, well, I'm almost made my decision.
Well, that's tremendous. Hopefully the book will help, because you see, I try and break down what I saw in the problems, and I got to be honest, when I was writing the book, I was shocked even by what I found. I had to triple check certain numbers. I was like, that number can't be right.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Good
Appreciate the heck out of you.
Here we are.
Finally get to meet you.
Yeah, it's been too long. What's up with that?
My real question is, I would love to hear your stance on the 22 veterans who committed suicide.
I know.
I really do, because I honestly believe, as a red-blooded American and a combat-injured veteran, that many veterans need to hear you say that you care, because a lot of us believe that the Democratic Party has no written verbiage about them caring about veterans, especially when it comes to like you, who actually put it out on your website, 22 veterans, and your stance for it. And I really appreciate that, because I found that none of the Democratic Party were doing that other than you. I find that very commendable, because it seems to be everybody's focusing on the other side of things versus the fact that we got men and women who serve our country and go home and choose to check out.
To me, it begins and ends with the people, with the vets. And like I said, it's like I'd much rather give veterans proper care than buy another aircraft carrier. You know, it's a pretty easy choice. You want me to sign your hat?
Yes, please. And can you do me one favor? Say hi to my best friend Tim in California on there, because he didn't think I was going to get here to meet you.
Sure, I'm very happy. What's your name?
Drew.
Got it. Let me know when.
Go ahead.
Hey Tim, it's Andrew Yang here. I'm here with your friend Drew. And he proved you wrong, brother. Look at that. Here he is. Let's make things better for you and Drew and every other person who served the country. I'm assuming he's a vet.
No, he's been supportive of me since I just went to serve the service.
Then vets and non-vets alike, we have to make this country work for us again. So thank you for the support. Appreciate the heck out of you. And next time this man speaks, you know he's going to do it.
Thank you. Awesome again. Thank you so much. You got my vote.
Appreciate the heck out of you. Thank you. I learn from veterans every time. I mean, I don't know if you saw recently, like, pretty much anytime a veteran says, hey, this helped me when I got home, I was like, we should just freaking make that available.
Your plan on helping, putting veterans in touch with mentors, I am a success story for that. I'm an 11 Bravo, no value to corporate America. Company took me in, showed me the ropes. 10 years later, and I'm a senior principal analyst.
I believe it, brother.
And the first thing I did was I had to automate myself out of a job.
Thank you, Drew.
This is the, I work on the campaign. This is the alderman. This is the alderman.
Sorry?
This is the alderman at large for Nashua.
I saw you. You were in the back there.
Yeah. That was
great
me.
to meet you, man. Congratulations.
Dude, likewise. You're fantastic, man. You nailed it.
Oh, thank you. That means so much to me.
Hi, I'm Sophia.
Hi, Sophia. Andrew.
Nice
It's
to
good to meet you.
Yep, really excited, man.
Yeah, let's get a good pic. Come on.
Yes.
Sweet. I'll be on your right.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Let's come in. Okay, ready? One more. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, you.
And you want me to sign anything?
Yeah, if you don't mind, man.
Not at all. So when does your term begin and stuff?
So I'm 2 years into a 4-year term right now. After Trump got elected, I was like, I can't sit around like lead by anymore.
Good for you. It was the same with me. I said like, oh, I should try and do something about this. And, you know, I had a sense as to what the real problems were, and I tried to talk to various politicians about it, and no one wanted anything to do with it. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll do this thing.
You make me proud, man.
I guess I'll give it a go.
I saw you wearing a Dead Kennedy shirt and a picture too, so just so you know.
So this is the you all are a couple?
Yeah, my fiance.
Because you all like are thank you for being looking couple. I feel like the political future, if you wanted it, would be very, very high.
Well, thanks. Oh my God,
She makes me look
I'm
good.
gonna faint.
Really, congratulations.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you for stepping up.
Good luck. Yeah,
We're all
absolutely.
doing the same things.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. It's so great to meet you.
You too.
You know we're having a party here in town tomorrow night. If you guys want to come by,
I'm a bartender in
You
town.
should go to
I'm working.
his bar.
Yeah, you should come into my bar. Someone should have talked to me. What's your bar? Panucci's Ale House?
I may try and make that trip.
Panucci's.
I may come by. You may see me.
I would like that a lot.
Yeah.
If not, Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're huge fans.
Oh, fantastic.
Hey, how are you? So we're here. Our 18-year-old son said you gotta meet this guy. He's awesome. So
that's so nice.
That's so awesome. All right, 1, 2. Yay! Awesome. Thank
his
you so
name's
much.
Alex. Would you mind signing this for him?
Good day. Where's he today?
So he's at college. He's up at Middlebury.
Oh, it's a great school.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
love your concepts around technology and the economy. We gotta.
We're way behind on it. It's very strange.
It really is. I think that's a really interesting differentiator for you. You know, the other candidates don't understand how that works.
They generally do not. Do you want me to sign your hat? Oh wait, that's not a math hat. It is a math hat.
It is a math hat.
Because I've got the Power Silver marker,
for it.
and when I've got this, I really want to sign any math hat. Let's check it out. It shows up so nicely. Say hey to Alex for me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
How's it going?
It's a great question, man. I like your thinking.
So I don't think you really answered the question, though.
I understand. There's a bill that you want.
Yeah, that's the first part, to basically bring back Glass-Steagall.
Yeah, which I agree with.
Okay, and then we have to become a sovereign nation again economically.
Yeah, you don't mean you don't want like the quote-unquote independent Fed. You want to just be able to.
Right, get back to the American system. The National Bank use credit to develop.
I don't disagree with that. Alexander Hamilton.
Yes, FDR also.
Yeah.
And to some extent JFK.
Yes.
Great meeting you.
Him and you
So
too.
very few people actually talk about that at the debates and campaigns.
Yeah.
And if we don't solve those problems, everything's going to go.
You should know that I'm aligned.
Okay.
I am. There
Oh,
are
so was
reasons
it-
why I wouldn't necessarily lead with that.
One of your
but-
supporters or volunteers was saying, along with green energy, you're also like nuclear.
I am pro-nuclear.
Are you pro-fusion?
Yes.
Okay, because between powering up businesses and homes and space exploration, you have to get there.
I gotta keep moving so we
Okay.
can make our
Thank you, Matt.
ride next
Really
week. Thank you,
appreciate the
sir.
question. Hello, how are you?
I saw you at the Riverwalk, way back.
Oh my gosh, good to see you again.
Good to be seen. Yeah. Baseball fan?
I was. Yeah, I am. I'm a Mets fan. We've had a.
So what's going to happen now with Wilpons are out, right? They've sold.
Thank goodness. Things could really step up in a big way.
You think?
Well, I mean, heck, like they've always been nickel and diming the team. You'll know they're a big market team.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
So fun. This entertains me.
Well, hey, I know. I want you to know the propaganda is getting mailed to my house. Very good. It's working.
Yeah, take a look.
We do have no affiliation with you guys, so I have to see it live.
Oh, cool. These are the big mailers you're saying?
Thanks, man.
I definitely haven't figured out.
See you next time.
It's frustrating.
Thank
No
you.
doubt. Hello, hello.
Yeah, I just want to do a group. This is
Nice.
Hello, team. Thanks for the hard work.
Hey, wait, actually, first, real quick, my girlfriend just grabbed one too.
Remember, just sign on the cap. Because again, I've got my silver power marker. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for putting up with your boyfriend. Working so hard on
2, 3.
on the campaign.
Thank you. Yeah, we actually we were friends before we dated, and we watched the debates together. From the start to now.
Going first.
You can go by yourself.
Yeah.
You've been running around all day.
What's that? You can even say I brought people together.
Okay, one more here, and then we'll.
Oh yeah, take that.
I work at the library.
Sure.
Oh,
I
very
love people who work
cool.
at libraries.
Yay, library.
Yeah, as a kid, I used to love my local library.
Great, yeah.
Check out
I'm
our-
Graham Hart, one of your field organizers here in Nashua, and yeah, it was great that you retweeted my tweet, and I didn't even realize that yesterday you said thank you, and it was the first time I ever posted anything, so thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, you post more pics of people doing positive things. I'll probably be all over it because I think they're kind of role modeling and very powerful. Thank you. Actually, it's your age.
That's great. We put out everything in.
It was a pretty good turnout in the snow.
Yes, understand.
All right, let me know when. Let me know when, so I don't embarrass myself.
That was good.
Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1.
We got it. Both that one. Yeah.
team they have, figure out who.
Yeah, we don't.
Get you guys stuff. You got anything on these? Yeah, you should.
'20 Democratic presidential candidate Senator Elizabeth Warren delivers a New Year's Eve speech Tuesday in Boston.